There is a city that promised to outlast time itself. Not metaphorically, literally. Dubai's official vision documents describe a plan to make the city the world's best place to live by 2040, to double its economy by 2033, to grow its population from 3.3 million to 7.8 million, to build a world record tower taller than anything ever constructed, to launch flying taxis by 2026, to run underground tunnel transportation designed by Elon Musk's Boring Company, to create a floating art museum above the creek designed by a Pritzker Prize-winning Japanese architect, to build an airport 5 times the size of the existing one by 2050, to dedicate 60% of the Emirates' land to nature reserves, to double its green spaces, to link the entire city through climate-controlled walking corridors, to become simultaneously a global financial hub, a tourism capital, a technology pioneer, a cultural destination, and a model of sustainable urban development for the 21st century. The plan for Dubai is not a city plan. It is a plan for perfection. It is a declaration that human ingenuity applied to an unlimited budget can solve not just the problems of today, but the problems of the future that has not yet arrived. Every other city in human history has been built by time and accumulated necessity, by the layering of generation upon generation of people making compromises and adapting to circumstances. Dubai decided to skip that part and build the end result directly. And for 25 years, the world watched the skyline rise and thought, they might be doing it. They might actually be doing it. And then February 28th, 2026 arrived. And the vision, every last word of it, collided with the reality that had always been there, 200 kilometers to the north, across the water, in the form of a country with 2,012 drones and 438 ballistic missiles, and a very clear understanding of exactly how much of Dubai's future depended on a premise that was never as solid as the renders made it look. Stay with me. Because to understand why the grandest vision in the history of modern city building is failing, you have to understand the specific gap between what was announced and what was actually built, and that gap existed long before a single drone was launched. The Dubai Creek Tower was announced in October 2016 at a groundbreaking ceremony attended by Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, who declared it would surpass the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, and become the centerpiece of a new waterfront district that would rival downtown Dubai. The architect was Santiago Calatrava. The design was described as inspired by a lily flower and an Islamic minaret. The observation deck was modeled on the Hanging Gardens of Babylon. The projected completion date was 2025, in time for Expo 2020, which had already been built nearby. The foundation was completed in 2018. Construction of the main tower never commenced. By July 2019, the tender process to award the construction contract was still ongoing. In April 2020, work was halted due to COVID-19, at which point no construction on the tower itself had occurred in nearly 2 years. By August 2020, all mentions and renders of the tower had been quietly removed from the project website. In August 2023, Okimar's founder, Mohammed Alabar, announced the tower was being redesigned, shorter than originally planned, though still tall by other standards. In January 2026, with the war beginning, Alabar announced that the construction tender would be launched within the next 3 months. Within the next 3 months? 10 years after the groundbreaking, 7 years after the foundation was completed, 1 year after the promised completion date, the city was preparing to launch the tender to hire a contractor to begin building. That is the Dubai Creek Tower story. And it is not an isolated story. It is the pattern. The Dubai 2040 Urban Master Plan, announced in 2021 with extraordinary fanfare, calls for doubling green spaces, creating green walking corridors across the city, building 5 integrated urban centers, and reaching a population of 7.8 million by 2040. Before the war, Dubai's population growth was running at approximately 4% annually, a pace that city analysts have now revised down to 1% for 2026, following the conflict's impact on expat attraction. The Dubai Economic Agenda D33, announced by Sheikh Mohammed in 2023, targets 32 trillion Emirati dirhams in economic output over 10 years and the consolidation of Dubai among the top 3 global cities. The year D33 was announced, AECOM research was documenting that Dubai infrastructure projects averaged 83% over schedule. 173 developers had missed their off-plan delivery deadlines. 145,000 off-plan units were being launched per day in 2024. JP Morgan warned that the demographic pipeline could not absorb 300,000 to 400,000 new units by 2028. The vision and the reality were operating in parallel universes, and the city's promotional apparatus was doing the job of making sure the vision was the only universe most people could see. This video is just the surface. Everything I collected is in the vault. The complete Dubai Creek Tower timeline from groundbreaking to January 2026 tender announcement. The full Dubai 2040 Urban Masterplan Population Projection Analysis, the D33 10-year economic output target versus current trajectory modeling, the AECOM infrastructure delay data, the developer default statistics, the JP Morgan off-plan unit pipeline analysis, the city population growth revision from 4% to 1%, the Al Maktoum International Airport 2050 completion timeline, the Nakheel 2009 bailout documents, and the full structural gap between every major Dubai vision announcement and its delivery record. Over 200 guides. One place. Link in the description. But stay here, because the deepest failure is not the delayed towers. The deepest failure is what the vision itself was attempting to do, and why it was structurally impossible from the beginning. Dubai built its identity on a specific theory of urban success. The theory was, if you build it, they will come. If the infrastructure is world-class, the talent will arrive. If the taxes are zero, the capital will relocate. If the hotel is 7 stars, the tourist will pay. If the tower is the tallest, the attention will follow. And for 25 years, the theory worked. It worked because Dubai was offering something genuinely unavailable elsewhere. The tax efficiency of a Swiss bank, combined with the weather of the Mediterranean, combined with the business environment of Singapore, combined with the liquidity of a property market running at growth rates that mature cities could not touch. The city attracted what it promised to attract, and the arrivals validated the theory, and the theory justified the next announcement, and the next announcement attracted the next wave of arrivals. It was a perfect machine, but it was a machine built on a single load-bearing assumption. The assumption was that the people who came would stay, that the capital that arrived would not leave, that the reputation for stability was self-sustaining rather than constantly requiring maintenance, and that the gap between the vision and the delivery did not matter as long as the new announcement landed before anyone looked too closely at the previous one. The Burj Khalifa was built. That much is real. But the Nakheel developer who built the Palm Jumeirah required a $14.6 billion government bailout in 2009. The Dubai World conglomerate required a $25 billion debt restructuring in 2010. The AECOM analysis found the typical major Dubai infrastructure project ran 83% over schedule. The Creek Tower Foundation was completed in 2018, and nothing was built on it for 8 years. The Al Maktoum International Airport that will replace Dubai International, the world's busiest airport, is projected for completion in 2050, not 2030, not 2040, 2050. And the Burj Binghati, the self-described world's tallest residential tower developed by the same Binghati, whose Islamic bonds fell into distressed territory in March 2026, was under construction and targeting completion around 2026 when the war began, and the financing landscape for Dubai real estate developers effectively closed. The vision promised immortality. The delivery record promised delay. And the war that emptied the city in March 2026 did not create that gap. It simply made the gap impossible to manage with a new announcement. Now, I need to be honest with you because the evidence requires it. The Burj Khalifa exists. The Palm Jumeirah exists. The Dubai Mall exists and handled 190 million visitors in its best year. The Emirates airline exists and was one of the finest long-haul carriers on Earth. The DIFC exists as a genuinely functional financial regulatory zone that attracted Goldman Sachs and BlackRock and JP Morgan. These things were built, and they were real, and they changed the map of global commerce and travel and wealth management in ways that no other city achieved in the same time frame. The vision was not entirely a lie. The delivery was not entirely a failure. What was failing before the war arrived and made it undeniable was the gap between the scale of the promises and the pace of their fulfillment, and the specific demographic dependency: 90% of the population on temporary visas, no citizenship pathway, no organic community accumulation. That meant the city had no cushion when the premise of stability that held all of it together was challenged. The people who built the vision understood this. Jim Crane at Rice University said it plainly in the first week of the war: Dubai will literally shut down if the expat exodus continues. Dubai is more exposed to the risks of an expat exodus than almost any city on Earth. He was not describing a new vulnerability. He was naming a structural fact that had been present in the model since the first tower went up. The city that promised immortality was always mortal. Every city is. What makes Dubai's version of this story different is the scale of the gap between the promise of permanence and the fragility of the architecture underneath it, and the specific year in which the architecture was tested. The Dubai 2040 vision is not cancelled. The D33 economic agenda is not abandoned. The Creek Tower tender is, according to its developer, launching within 3 months of January 2026. The city will not disappear. But the grandest vision in the history of modern urban planning, the vision of a city built beyond the limitations of geography, history, politics, and human frailty, has encountered all 4 of those limitations simultaneously. And the world watching the empty pools and the vacant DIFC towers and the distressed bond prices is seeing what happens when a city that promised to outlast time runs out of time before the vision is complete. Subscribe and share this with someone who still believes the renders were the city. The next vault opens soon. What is inside is even heavier.